Morning glory, evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in Studio West. Welcome on this Monday. Thank you for joining me. There is a second carrier group steaming towards the Middle East, which is the second time in 3 years we've had two carrier groups in the hot spot. And we'll talk about what that means with my next guest. Major General Mel Spiese, retired United States Marine Corps, been a friend of mine for a long time. General Spiese joined me because I had a number of questions about the early Trump moves. Good morning, General. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate your being here.
Absolutely, Hugh. Good morning. Good afternoon, I guess.
It is afternoon out here now. Now, I want to begin with whether or not you were surprised that the president so quickly replaced the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Charles C.Q. Brown, and the CNO, Admiral Lisa Franchetti. Were you surprised that he did that?
Not particularly. He had been, I think, pointing in that direction. So, no, it was really not a surprise.
Do you expect other members of the Chairman Council, the Joint Chiefs, to also go soon?
I'm not sure. I haven't gotten any indications. I haven't read anything anywhere, Hugh, that would indicate there is dissatisfaction with any of the other service chiefs. So I don't think so. I think we would hear something that would point to that if that were in the offing.
Now, if the president were to call you up right now, General Spiese, and say, what do I need in a CNO? What would you say to him?
Well, the first thing, Hugh, is shipbuilding. We have to have somebody who really understands the problems we have in the failed shipbuilding of the last 3.5 decades and has some idea of what we can do to fix it. And that would really include changing how we do business. Clearly what we're doing now fails, so we need to have somebody who can talk with real depth about what is broken in the process and what needs to be done to reset the process to deliver better decisions and better program management.
Where do you find candidates for the CNO with that skill set? There are billets for shipbuilders. I knew one. He was a captain. He was in charge of destroyers. He's in the private sector now, and Mark might be listening. But there's really very few billets for shipbuilders. Where do you go and find someone who knows acquisition to be the CNO?
Well, it's not so much acquisition, Hugh. We've got acquisition specialists. It's the decision-making that goes along with it. Getting the right requirements, understanding the process of shipbuilding, when the decisions need to be made, how we do the management and oversight, how we can be inside of the decision-making cycle rather than behind the decision-making cycle. So we have people that certainly touch it. We've got admirals who have served inside of Naval Sea Systems and other administrative commands who have understanding. So they exist. They're out in the Navy right now. It's a question of identifying the right one.
Do you have to go down deep? There is a term of art that civilians like me learn late in life called deep select, where you skip over the people who are in line for the job and you go to a 3-star or 2-star. Do you think President Trump would be well served by deep selecting or by staying with the people who've come up through the system?
Well, you can only go so far in deep selection, so whoever you reach down and get is still going to be a part of the system. Skipping a couple of steps runs some risk in the sense that they would likely lack experience at the more senior grades and how the business operates. The key isn't trying to find who somebody might be in their career, it's finding the right person. If we don't have the population right now, then he has to go out and find it. There's no question about it. If we end up with somebody younger, then that's fine too. I'm not so sure that that in and of itself is an answer.
Okay, now I want to switch over to recruitment and retention, because the president ran often citing our miserable recruitment numbers. Any indication that that's turned around? Do you have a theory as to why it happened and a proposal on how to fix it?
I'm a little cautious of the numbers we're getting right now, Hugh. I'm not quite sure what they mean. if you accept them at face value, maybe some things have turned around. But if you look inside of them, there might be some concern. We've done a couple of things recently, the Army and the Navy in particular, building prep programs for kids who aren't quite qualified to make it into recruit training to get them ready. I think that's fine. That makes perfect sense. You adapt to the conditions you have. My biggest concern, though, is that once you start doing that, you're under a lot of pressure to get people through those particular pipelines. You're under pressure for the numbers anyway, and you run the risk of lowering standards. And there are some indications that we might be seeing lower standards of people coming in. And one of the ways you can monitor that is by tracking first-term attrition. Are they completing their first enlistment or not? If they're not completing their first enlistment, then clearly you're bringing people in who don't have what it takes to make it through 4, 5, or 6 years.
What is the ideal for the services? Do they want 2 enlistments, 3 enlistments? What do they want from a sailor, soldier, or Marine, or airman?
The services are built a little bit differently. The Marine Corps turns over. We keep a very, very young force, and we're happy with the preponderance of the Marines leaving at the end of 4 years. First enlistment becomes a little bit more difficult with high skill, low density occupational specialties, and we try to retain those through bonuses and things like that. So the services are structured a little bit differently. I think the real key is mid-level management. The E6s, maybe older E5s, and the E7s in the enlisted force, are we getting them with the right years of experience? Are they holding on to the right skill sets that allow them to develop the subordinates below them, keep them motivated, keep them interested, and in many ways retaining them, and then meeting the needs of their bosses up above? We've run through cycles. You can stuff anybody in a uniform. You can pin any sort of rank insignia on them. It's a question of whether or not they're delivering. So I think we really have to look at that mid-level management leadership performance to see how well we're doing.
Now, General, I know you spent some time at the Pentagon, and I can't remember your official titles. You were a poobah in the education system of the United States Marine Corps. How much of the Pentagon civilian force, in your opinion, is superfluous? How much could it be downsized?
Well, I never served in the Pentagon, Hugh. I was pretty fortunate, but I'm familiar with it, and I went there. It's difficult to tell. I think we are probably fat inside the Pentagon. You could throw an estimate out of 10 or 15%. I don't know what savings we get out of that, and certainly we need to trim the headquarters down to the right size. There's no question about that, especially people in the bureaucracy that end up interfering with progress and interfering with moving forward. But I don't know that there's any particular magic inside of that. It really is making sure we restructure the processes that aren't working right now. We get rid of people who aren't contributing to the movement forward. Get rid of things that we've added that don't bring value to the warfighter, for sure.
All right. Let me move to the last subject, which we'll take a break and we'll finish on the other side. Retention of our mid-level officers, our majors, our lieutenant colonels, and our colonels, our lieutenant commanders, commanders, and captains. Are we doing a good job keeping the good people in uniform?
I think we've got some issues there, Hugh. Talking to my son, getting a sense of where the flow points are in promotions, time in service, time in grade. I think we are losing a lot of great young men and young women that we would prefer to retain. And yeah, that slows down the promotion process, but it's a balance of experience. So I think we are losing some experienced people that we would prefer to hold on to.
When I come back, I'm going to ask you how we take that cohort, those officers in the senior officer ranks, not general officers, but lieutenant commander to captain and major up to colonel, and turn them into strategists? Because I've been talking with a number of people, and I'll be talking with Admiral Montgomery about this later today. Are we developing another generation of George Marshalls or not? I'll be right back with Mel Spiese. Stay tuned, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. One of the smartest guys I know is Major General Mel Spiese, retired United States Marine Corps. I asked him to join me because of the conversation I had last week with Secretary Rubio, where he said the story of the 21st century will be the story of the relationship between the United States and China. And my conversation with Lord Andrew Roberts about the fact that there were a lot of strategists running around helping FDR and Churchill. Not so sure we've got him now. So, General Spiese, first off, how do you define a strategist, a military strategist?
Yeah, I don't know how you find them, Hugh. We really need to be in the business of building them. Finding them tends to be random, and if it's important, then you can't leave those outcomes to randomness, so we need to build them.
And so let's talk about, I know I can point to George Marshall and Sir Alan Brooke and a few other people who are strategists, who are widely regarded as strategists. How do you build a strategist?
The truth is, Hugh, that was done through the professional military education system that had been established inside of the Army, and frankly did a very good job of taking people and equipping them as they progressed through their careers to the next step, giving them the set of skills to do that, but even more so, laying the groundwork so they could think beyond where they happen to be. Right now, our PME tends to be dominated by building planners. We've consumed ourselves with building planners, operational planners, campaign planners, and we're not getting people set to think and work at a much higher level until pretty late in their career.
You used the term PME. I'm not sure what that meant, General.
Yeah, I apologize. Professional military education.
Okay,
That's
so
the business I was in to a large degree.
So when did the change happen, or did it happen so incrementally as to not to be noticed, to go from building strategists to building planners of a variety of sorts?
Yeah, I think it happened over time, and then certainly these last 25 years, the demands of cycling through war put a lot of pressure on us, making sure the officers that we're sending out to the units, in particular those who are getting ready to deploy, the headquarters that are deploying and managing the tactical units, were proficient at that. And that has dominated us for really a long time, many decades. And we really don't start getting people thinking at a higher level or working to a higher level, as I mentioned, until too late. And you're not typically going to get to those assignments unless you get to the combatant command or you're working at the service headquarters in the Pentagon. And we don't really tailor people into those positions very well.
What kind of assignments are we talking about, General? Is there an office marked grand strategy, come in here and think?
Nope. I think really the assignments end up at those higher headquarters. When you get into the J5 directorate, the J3 directorate, and certainly J4 logistics and assessments and things like that, because they're dealing at the much higher level. They're dealing with bigger areas. They're dealing with bigger problems. They're looking for longer term effects in the things that the services are doing inside of the theaters. That actually ends up being a pretty small population of people that end up doing that. And it only happens maybe once or twice in a career as you're working your way up through the grade of colonel. So I think doing a better job of identifying, sending people to those places, and then tailoring the professional military education they go through to meet those needs.
How much time do you think the Chinese People's Liberation Army spends developing strategists? Or do they leave that to the party?
I don't know. I'm completely unfamiliar with that, Hugh. The Russians certainly did a lot of work, in particular very senior officers. I assume the Chinese are doing the same thing, especially if they keep their senior leaders in positions for a long time. Then you have a chance to get some really good return on the investment. We move people through assignments pretty quickly, so the ability to have influence and impact becomes very limited in that regard as well. So I think there's a linkage, not just how we move people about, how long we keep them in positions in order to try to build the long-term continuity that can give us the opportunity to put together strategies and see them play out effectively over time.
Last question, General. The Chinese assessment of their military came out last week. Our assessment of the Chinese military, I want to be clear for the audience, came out. It's enormous. They got the largest fleet in the world, et cetera, et cetera. When you look at what they're building, what do you infer from what they're building?
They're building the kind of military, Hugh, that you would expect of a nation that is growing its economy and influence around the world. What they're doing with their Navy is not unexpected. It's the same thing we do in the sense that we want to make sure we can protect the lifelines of our prosperity, of our economy, so we have the ability to get out and reach. And they are certainly doing that. That isn't a surprise. And I don't want to get in the peaceful rise, are we trying to contain them? But it's an understanding of what they're doing. So they're building a very large military that can take care of the expansive influence that they're growing throughout the world.
Is our response to what they're doing appropriate, or is it too little, too late?
I think it's too little, too late. We have got to make tremendous transformations in shipbuilding and the defense industrial base. We're absolutely way behind, and I am really suspect that we are just anchoring ourselves on, well, our sailors are better, our ships are better, everything is going to be fine. I'm not so sure that that works, and we're getting at a point where there is far too much risk. We can't be in a position right now where we can assure ourselves of a satisfactory outcome, and you don't want to be in that kind of spot. We've got a lot of work to do to make sure any potential collision with them, it's for sure that we're going to come out on top, and we're not there.
No, we're not. General Mel Spiese, retired United States Marine Corps. Thank you very much, Major General. Great to have you. Always good to see you.